wrapped our lives around keeping Moxy's routine so consistent.
The loss of control. Pre-Moxy, any little disruption into my schedule, if I couldn't work out, it would destroy my entire day.
You really learn to appreciate time, and time has become more scarce.
Everything is just so much more intentional with the child.
Welcome to Ace Rodney Talks for the Superstars. Tonight.
Before having our baby Moxy, our days were a well-oiled machine. Post-Moxy, we've had to hit the reset button on our daily routines. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on our lives now since becoming parents together. How our routine has evolved, how our goals have become refined, both the challenge in the change and the surprising ways it has made us stronger and more intentional. And don't forget, if you like our content, please subscribe. It means the world to us. Now let's dive in. So I previously listened to our former episode, which was Season 1, Episode 11, filmed in August 2023. It was called Our Daily Routines Psycho Edition. That was right before we found out we were pregnant. And I was thinking about that is our before Moxy era and what our life and routines looked like then compared to now. And as I was listening to that episode, I was cringing for multiple reasons. One, at the way I spoke and articulated was cringeworthy. I mean, I'm not the greatest, but I like to think that there has been some improvement. You were good already. But so just in the way that we spoke on the podcast, but most importantly and relevant to this episode, is our routines. I even cringed at that. And the reason for me is that they felt, and they were, so robotic. Our schedules were so rigid. And for those of you who haven't listened to that, I would encourage you to do so because you'll know we're not going to get into the exact details of that, but you'll understand what we're talking about. And just briefly, I literally said this in the episode. I said, I wake up at 3 a.m. I never press snooze. I run 9 to 10 miles. I do abs for 6 minutes. I get in the cold plunge. Like that. That is how I explained it, and that was true. And I don't want to like poo-poo everything that we did for so long because I think that was a very important part of our journey, like developing our businesses and becoming who we are now. But when I'm happy, I would just say that we've evolved since, and much of that has been since having Moxy.
Yeah, I think as I think back and as I was listening, it's interesting to me what you choose to do with your time when you have 100% control of it. Because we did, I mean...
little disruption.
Brooke and Grace and Liv are older and very capable. So at least from that part of our lives, not the business demands, but the family demands or someone being completely dependent on you and reliant on you and incapable literally of doing anything, feeding themselves, all of it. Like as that change happens with a baby or a newborn, it's just interesting to me that the choices that we made when we had 100% control of our own time, and we chose to sit on the couch across from each other and
work.
And
when
work.
you say that, people think we're watching TV.
Sit across from the couch from each other, laptops on lap, head down, working for hours on end. Yeah, it's that was the thing that was so amazing, and then flip to where we are now, and still being able to be productive with a little human being 100% dependent on you. It's all very possible. But just the idea is like, wow, I had 100% control of my schedule and really unlimited time, if you will, just not a lot of other demands outside of business. And that's what I chose to do with it. That was the takeaway for me.
Yeah, I believe that, I thrived, I think we both did, on knowing exactly how the day would unfold. I thrived on definitely, I hate this word, but I think it applies, the grind. It's like wake up, work out, then work all day and night. Like I really thrived on that. And that's just how every day unfolded, but for us. But what I was really thinking about, I'm like, okay, obviously Parenthood changes your routine for so many reasons. But one thing that I've really noticed is like the intention behind everything and the meaning. Like I ran and I would work out I think it was more for like these surface level aesthetic reasons, we talked about in that former episode how we ate very little during the day and we had like one meal at night. And that's changed for me. Like, I now fuel for performance as a mom. I know Moxie's watching, and for work and for my workouts. I just don't think I had the same meaning in a lot of my goals and aspirations and the things I did on a day-to-day basis. And that's something I haven't really thought about until I was planning for this episode. So is that something you've noticed?
I have, and the other word that came to mind for me back at that time was predictability. You know, you and I both love predictability, and when you stranglehold your schedule like that, for me, I think there is that comfort level around the predictability, the exact opposite of what we have now. But I think for me too, that predictability piece was very comfortable, and doing the same thing over and over. There's a comfort inside of that familiarity. And you have total control, where now you have to be able to pivot in a moment's notice and not be upset or be frustrated with it, because you just don't have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and I couldn't handle that. You know, pre-Moxy, any little disruption into my schedule, if I couldn't work out, you know, I was a bear to be around.
Yeah,
Like, you
bear.
did not want to be around me.
Good
But
word.
it would destroy my entire day,
It would.
to the point where I could not focus on anything else, thinking about how that didn't get done. It rarely happened, but anything that just didn't go exactly at planned was a problem. And I always knew that, but it became very glaring once we had
Well, I
a
think
child.
if there's any part of you that is selfish, that becomes, if you then fast forward to where we are now, for example, and you look backward in retrospect, then I think anything that would look or feel selfish would stick out significantly.
Yeah. So let's get into the post-Moxy shift. So adapting to parenthood together. You know, when Moxie came into my life, you know, everything has changed. Suddenly, the perfectly planned schedule I had relied on for years wasn't practical, but not even possible. I had to learn to pivot. We've had to learn to pivot to find new ways to pursue goals, but be present as a mom, very present. And it hasn't. I want to be very clear. It hasn't lessened at all my ambition or aspirations or goals, but it has refined them. And I have found I've looked a lot more closely at where I'm spending my time, where I'm setting my goals, and everything now comes with intention and meaning. Like, I'm not everything that I do. And that is a big difference post Moxy. I want to get into that, but I think we should talk about just the initial adjustment of from having a newborn to Moxy being 8 months old, because even the schedule when we had Moxy, our routine as a newborn to now, has evolved. So let's talk about that on a more granular level, like that initial adjustment. How did it change our routines?
Yeah. So back to that word unpredictability. You know, when you have a little one, you know, their eating schedules and everything that goes into that, and I imagine a lot of our audience has kids, if they're running businesses, or, you know, just the initial piece where, you know, you are on call every couple of hours at least, right? It's at least every couple of hours from a feeding perspective, 24/7 around the clock. And that was something that was a huge adjustment back to having control over your own time, when you went to bed, when you got up. Although, you know, we weren't huge sleepers anyway, but we still were calling the shots. And that's completely changes when you have a newborn. And I will say, I think if anything, our communication, which to me was always as rock solid as anything I've ever experienced, actually went to an entirely different level. You know, the ability to make sure that between the two of us, we had 100% of responsibilities covered, which now involves, you know, a little tiny life that's completely helpless and incapable of doing anything for herself. We just had to work on a new level of communication. I don't mean we had to work at it at all. I just mean we just started into that, and as good as it was, we just banded together to make sure that we were taking care of each other, but then collectively we're also taking care of and meeting all of Moxie's needs simultaneously. And that was an interesting experience for me.
Yeah, and for me, it wasn't about less sleep or anything like that. It was actually about the loss of control. like that was the biggest difference for me, hands down. I'm very type A. We're very type A. So that loss of control was super challenging in the beginning. I had to embrace and lean into the fact that I was no longer in the driver's seat. And I had never experienced that in my life, or not for a very long time. As far as our communication, one thing I think was really important to point out is in the beginning, in the very beginning, even before we had Moxie, we talked about making sure neither of our businesses was secondary. So as a mom, a lot of times, this is just how it is, moms, their career gets put on hold, they take care of the child. And I said to you, I remember saying this to you, like, I want to make sure Tagler Construction Supply is not second to Arnold Packaging, that you don't go off and get, everything you do for Arnold Packaging, and then I'm watching Moxie, and then once you come back and you get your stuff done, it's my turn.
No,
Like,
I remember.
that's-
I remember vividly. I think it was March. Mox was due in May, and I could tell that you were definitely going through some things. I mean, I noticed it was very noticeable that something had changed, or there was something that was on your mind. And I don't recall exactly how we got to it, where you said, "I'm worried," and you said exactly what you just said to me, which was quite foreign, because at no point had it ever occurred to me that would happen. It was never my intention that you would be, doing half Tegler and half Moxie, and I would be doing 100% of Arnold Packaging. That never occurred to me, but it was something that was very top of mind for you, and we talked about it, and I found it interesting. Like, it was not a shift or was, I need to reset. I was never heading in that direction, but I thought it was interesting that you were concerned about it, right? It was never a thought in my mind that Taylor would take a back seat, or that to me it was always going to be each of us doing 100% of half, and then doing all of our businesses, and also continuing to help each other with our businesses like we always have.
Yeah, so when she was first born, not only was I figuring out my new identity as a mother, but also our new routine. And it's a little coincidental that this is about routines, because what we found is we're going to have less of a routine than we've ever had. Still need to get the same amount of things done in the day, but we have to be okay with fitting it in when you can. When Moxie was first born, I mean, it would be like, if I had to run at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, like that's what happened. And it's one of the best things that happened to me, because I was able to let go of that absolute grip hold on control. And she becomes the number one priority. So anything else is secondary. It's the backseat. Her needs are first. And it's the most selfless I've ever felt in my entire life. And that felt very freeing to me. Like, it felt amazing that I just was, I no longer mattered. Like, I don't. Like, she is number one. And it just, in a weird way, felt like it took so much pressure off of me. It's very hard to explain. Does that even make sense, saying it out loud?
Yeah, I don't want to get off the routines topic, but I think we need to dig into that on a different day. Whatever. If there was a cathartic feel about being able to unload whatever those things are, I'd like to dig into that on a different episode. But no, it makes all the sense in the world. I think I've never used. We talk about our. One of my sayings on here is E equals R times C. Right? It doesn't matter, as long as you're committed. It doesn't matter how right you are. That, I think, describes our exact approach to Moxie, right? The number of high-speed pivots that we make together, things that we never saw coming, where, we'll even try to get back into our old school planning method, and that becomes completely knocked off base in about 2 seconds. You're like, well, that was dumb.
Yep.
That was never going to happen. And I think one of the things I had to get my head back around, which is where I made the comment about selfish, where you look back and go, well, yeah, of course you could have done that then, but you don't have the option to do that now, is, where I would be, I was sitting down to, let's just say I was going to revert back to my old schedule, and I was going to plop ass down on the couch, and I was going to be in front of the laptop, and and I was going to do it for 4 or 5 hours. Well, no sooner did that happen, there was a cry from the nursery, there was a something, and that was not happening. And there's an example where old Mick had this mindset that he was just going to do what he wanted to do for a period of time, but there was a 2-week-old, 4-week-old, 6-week-old that had other ideas in mind, and between the two of us, we were going to have to get it. And those days of just calling the shots on your schedule, finally, but it took me a while to get my head around that, and I think I probably bratted out a couple of times, or was frustrated. but not too long before it's, well, yep, it doesn't work that way anymore. So get your head around it and then figure out how to restructure your schedule so you can be as productive, and then also start relying on other people too. And that was a great byproduct for me, is not doing 100% of things around in the business world myself, letting my team do what they need to do.
Yeah, I wrote this down. This was just a thought. It says, motherhood hasn't lessened my ambition. It's refined it. It's taught me that progress isn't about perfection, but about showing up, adapting, and staying committed. Even if it looks different than before, in many ways, I feel stronger because I'm building my goal around life's beautiful unpredictability. And that was something that I think really helped me when I ran the ultra marathon. Like, I cobbled together so many ways to train. A lot of them were walking Moxy in the stroller because I couldn't run with her because she didn't have the neck control.
Right.
So I was just like cobbling all these pieces together of training blocks.
Sure.
And I think in the end, it did me so much good because I just was resilient and resourceful, but I was so committed, like even more committed than if I could wake up on my own 3 a.m. and get the exact training done. So it was so scrappy, and I think that really translated into the race. But I want to get into the actual granular big changes that have happened from a routine perspective. Like one of the things we said, I woke up 3 a.m., you woke up at 5 a.m. I have not...
4.
You had said 5 in the episode.
Oh, did I?
You were waking up at 5.
Okay.
Now, I have not set, and this is crazy, I haven't set an alarm since we've had Moxy because she's going to wake up and feed in the middle of the night or really early in the morning. So typically, if she wakes up around 2 or 3 or 4, I just get up usually at that time because I have a really hard time going back to sleep. Or if it's like at midnight, I know she's going to wake up a second time. So she's my alarm clock, and
Right.
it's typically super early. Big change. Second big change, we now have a second person, an au pair living with us who works 7 to 5 during the day. So having having another family member enter, trust them to take care of our child, and also have to work with them. Like during the day, she's watching our child, and then there's a handoff. Wildly different than just the two of you in a house living together.
Right. No, there's this this thing that we have, sometimes spoken, sometimes unspoken, where one of us is there until 7 to give the handoff.
7 a.m.
Right, 7 a.m. And then one of us is back by 5 p.m. to take the handoff back from Gabby, our au pair. And that's been interesting. But I think for me, it's just about how seamlessly we have fell into that, where we still get our workouts in, still get an appropriate amount. We're sleeping less, but I mean, and I don't know if it's more than if we're sleeping less than we did before Mox, but that's something that has been sacrificed. One of our words we use on here. That's something that's been sacrificed as part of the process is sleep. Like you said, if Mox is up at 2 and we happen to have gotten a few hours of sleep, you just get up. You're not going back to sleep after you're up for an hour and taking care of a baby, right? I mean, talk about ultra attention and not being able to slough off. Pretty well awake after you've done that for a period of time.
Yeah, a couple other very specific examples that have changed. I now work from home a lot more. So pre-Moxy, I was coming into the office pretty much every day. My team has always been hybrid. I was coming in almost every day. Now I work hybrid just like in the same days my team does. I like being, even if Gabby, our au pair, has responsibility for Moxy during those hours, I like to be there. I like the touch points for Moxy. I like to be able to see what she's doing or just check in or just hold her for a minute. Like that's really important to me, those little moments. So that's a difference. And then another difference is the way we, I would say like the way we eat, because one of the things we talked about was like how we eat and nutrition. And so much of what we do, we want to be an example for Moxy now. So you and I, we were eating out, we were going out. Now we're very intentional about cooking at home. Like most meals, we cook at home. I know she's watching. I'm fueling so much more. Like my performance has become so much more important than anything else, than an aesthetic, anything surface level. And that, I think that translates across the board. Like now my goals with running are so much more intentional. I think we can move on to like that deeper purpose and meaning in our goals and aspirations and ambitions. There's so much more why. and finding a way to chase them in a more flexible way. Like, it made me realize I want goals that mean something, that are not just for me, but also for her. I don't want to chase just for the sake of achievement. I want it to model resilience and purpose and strength. And I always go back to running because it's a personal passion of mine. But I was just like running intervals, I feel like, in the past to look good. And now it's like I have running races and I want her to see it. I'm fueling to perform really well and to have her be a part of it and you be a part of it. It's just so much more meaningful. And anything I do or spend the time doing, I want it to have that purpose. Now when running my business, like I'm always thinking, not that I wasn't before, but the people and their families. Like, I'm so much quicker to think about this employee, but also like all the kids they have and their quality of life, because I know what it's like now. Like, yesterday we had a snow day. I'm thinking to myself, like, I want them to go out at 3:00 and go sledding with their kids. That would have never crossed my mind. Everything is just so much more, I think, intentional with the child.
Well, right. I mean, your lens is much more
Maybe
wide.
that's the way to say
Hell,
it.
I had to, I had to let you know which days were holidays
Yeah,
not that long ago,
yes.
right? I mean, you you didn't even know which days were holidays.
That's
Where
true.
I was like, well, wait a minute, we're actually not working that day. Oh, we're not? Well, you and I would, but the rest of the world's going to be off. So that's definitely been a huge change. And yeah, listen, I think that that empathy in those moments, once you have that experience, and it's the first thing you think of, like, oh, well, what happens, when they canceled school on Sunday night? Great example. Now all of a sudden it's, okay, well, what are my teammates going to do with and about their children? I mean, what's going to happen if we open and they don't have childcare? How are we going to accommodate that? In the past, that would even, we don't get a ton of snow anymore, but that would have been something that crossed your mind. It would have been, well, it's a work day. What's the problem? Let's get to it. And I think your eyes are much more wide open from an empathy perspective than they have ever been before.
Yeah, I also wrote this down. I said, if you're chasing goals, and this is for the audience, that don't feel meaningful, it's okay to step back and reassess. Life has a way of giving us the chance to realign, whether it's through parenthood, a big change, or a simple moment of clarity. For me, that shift came through Moxy, and it's the most rewarding change I've ever made. And that's really, it's just a reassessment, almost a reset on life. Like, I've told you this yesterday when she saw snow for the first time. I like experiencing life and through her eyes, seeing everything for the first time. It's so, I don't mean to get woo woo, but it's like really magical, because we sit there every day of this like amazing things going on and we don't care to notice. But when you have a child, all of a sudden you do notice like those little moments. And I just feel like it's been a really needed reset that I didn't know I even needed.
Yeah, how would you?
Yeah.
Yeah, how would you? Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can ever simulate or have any idea what parenthood is going to be like until you're there. I mean, maybe if you get a glimpse, let's just say you're super close with your sibling and you watch them go through the process, you might get a little bit of a glimpse, but nothing like when you're actually you're responsible yourself. Completely different.
And the other thing that's really changed, as far as what I do, daily life routines, is just my idea of what productivity actually is. Like, before, it was working, and a lot of times it was working to work. Like, I'm not sure there was much intention other than I felt like that's what I was supposed to do. Now, a lot of that is just, as we call it, unstructured time with Moxy. It could literally be doing nothing but just hanging out with you and her, and getting to see her smile or do something new because she's doing new things every day. That is so, if productive is the right word, fulfilling, rewarding, productive. Like, I don't need to be sitting on my laptop working away to feel like I'm being fulfilled in my life. It's just like all those unstructured, free flowing, spontaneous moments with her. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I know. I agree. I think the biggest takeaway for me is just having to, because we still have the same amount of responsibilities, right? We still have the same number of things to get done, and just being able to fit it all in. And when there becomes, I think you really learn to appreciate something and manage it in a more cherished way when it becomes more scarce. And what I'm speaking of specifically is time, and time has become more scarce. So yes, we still have the same amount and same number of demands from a work perspective, but and then have to fit in and manage the care of a newborn, and it still all gets done. So you just become so much more efficient when you don't have the ability to take for granted the amount of free time. I even say disposable time. Was it necessarily to sit in front of the laptop for 5 hours when the same amount of work's getting done sitting in front of it for 2 or 1.5 or whatever it is now? No, it was never necessary.
And I think the real, and we've gotten into really how our daily lives have changed even more than routine. But I think really the key here is prioritization. So what are your priorities? And if you become a parent and you don't get very clear on what your priorities are, there are things that are going to fall by the wayside. You're not going to be as productive maybe in your career. Like it can't all get done if you don't cut away the fat. And for us, we've been very, very clear on prioritizing and making sure, and then like getting rid of everything else. We don't go out anymore. Unfortunately, we rarely hang out with friends. I mean, we talk to our closest friends, but if it's acquaintances, and we're not seeing them, we're not going to networking events at all.
Yep.
So it's family. It's family, the girls, Moxy. I mean, really,
Family.
when we go out, it's
Family.
if we go out, it is with family.
Sure.
And then, we have our businesses. Then we have Love and Business, the podcast. And then we have our running and our health and fitness as a family value.
Well,
That's it.
Yeah, but I think one of the things we're having a hard time with discussing routines is because we don't have one. We have basically adopted Moxie's routine, and then we fit our lives in and around it because it's not negotiable. When she needs something, she needs it. So it's going to be hard for us, I think, anytime soon to really get a routine. She is going to be the routine, right? And we're going to make sure that she stays in her routine, and then we're going to fit our lives in and around it and always be ready for really high-speed pivots. I mean, just the lack of predictability about when she wakes up. It's 12, it's 1, it's 2. There's just no predictability. And I think we've gotten our head around the idea that there won't be any, but also still learning too. If she awakens at 1 a.m., then that means we're going to be doing something again before the 7 o'clock handoff, right? There's a great example where if she were to sleep until 3, we're probably going to be okay until the 7 o'clock handoff. And it might have me cutting out a little bit earlier or whatever that would look like. So I think the thing is we really do. There's not a lot of routine for us to talk about because we've wrapped our lives around keeping Moxie's routine so consistent.
And I'm sure a lot of people, I mean, this is something I questioned myself in the beginning is how do you prioritize? Like, if we're talking about, okay, life's unpredictable and you have to be very clear on your priorities to get it all done and be as productive as you were before in the things that you want to be productive in. And the only way you can do that is becoming very clear on what means the most to you. And I also think those things have to mean something. They have to be very meaningful or they won't get done because you're tired and all of these, there's so much disruption and chaos. Chaos is probably a good word.
Yeah, it's chaos.
So it's sitting down and getting so clear. And I feel like we do this all the time. We're like, we have these buckets, at least I do. I write it down. Or, I do have like this. These are the buckets that matter. And if it's not going into one of these, it's off the radar. It's not. No attention's going towards it.
Can you think of an example of something that would have been on the radar prior that you just don't recall having done any time recently since Mox was born?
A lot of it's related to business, but we both did actually, a ton of speaking engagements, a lot of panels, a lot of networking, a lot of dinners out with vendors or suppliers, like all of that. That's just, I can't remember the last time.
Yeah, I would say that, those evening hours, right, from 5 until whatever time is generally home together and with Mox. So that's a big difference.
I mean,
sure.
Also, yeah, and they're part of those things. Like we've talked about it before, but like drinking alcohol, that's been cut out completely. I mean, and because there can be no lost time. Like, time is so much more precious, and you have to treat it like that. So between prioritizing and embracing every moment you have, that is necessary.
Yeah.
So key.
Yeah, the time to slug the drinks, and then the time to recover from
Like, you
slugging the
can't-
drinks. There's not even an option anymore.
Well, you lose that time plus potentially a whole nother day.
Right.
Like, you pick what's most important to you.
Yep.
What do you value?
Yeah, absolutely. And and again, you just I think certainly I made that mistake early, right? Not evolving as quickly as I needed to, and
Yeah,
paying
that's actually
and paying
true.
the price. Have definitely
I've
paid
never
the
thought
price.
about that, but yeah.
We're a little slow to evolve. I generally have to learn things the hard way at least 3 times.
So overall, when we're looking back and you're listening to August 2023 when we filmed our initial video of our routines to now, I feel like these changes, it's an evolution, it's a new chapter, it's a I think refinement is the right word. How do you feel about where we've come, where we are, what we might need to improve on, and how it compares to that reflection in the rearview window of where we were? Like, what kind of emotion does that evoke for you?
My favorite thing about what has transpired in the last 8 months, right? But even before, because you're pregnant for 9 months prior to that, so it's really been a 17.
I was?
I believe. I think so. Well, nobody knew, at least not here. Remember,
Yeah.
You smuggled a child around for 9 months.
You know what's really funny? I was wearing this sweater, one of the first photos I ever took when I was pregnant, and I wasn't showing for a really long time, but even I thought I was like showing. I thought everybody knew. Like, I had nothing. It was too early.
You went up to the due date and smuggled
but I
Mox
was
over
literally
there
wearing this.
until 8 months and whatever days. I mean, it was right up to the end. I mean, so obviously the Moxie part, but I think one of my favorite things is how close you and I have become. And just playing off of one another the way we always have, but even in this silent way. I mean, we just understand each other's cues, and every once in a while, I'll be zigging and you'll be zagging, and there's going to be some friction. But by and large, our friction is almost non-existent, and everything gets done at the same speed and the same pace. And the quiet things that we just took over. Go back to our mask business, for example. We used to laugh about how you just took on
The mask business where we created masks
yes,
in
thank you.
COVID.
Yes, where I flew back from
Custom
California
masks.
and got stuck on the couch because Hogan had put a 14-day sit down on anybody out of the state because nobody knew what the hell was going on. And we decided to design and manufacture and distribute masks because those were becoming mandatory all over the place. And the same way in that moment that you did the social media
The sales.
piece and sales of that, and I handled generally the operation side of it, we've fallen right into that same mode with Mox and getting everything covered, where it's making sure the house is covered and business, and I help out more with your business, you help out more with my business. I just feel like the assists, grab a basketball term, the assists are at the highest level of all time, and there's a lot of thunder dunks as part of that we get to celebrate together, which is cool.
What's a thunder dunk?
Well, when if I throw you the alley oop at the rim and you hammer that thing home, then that is a thunder dunk. Daryl Dawkins, right, Tommy? You remember Daryl Dawkins? Chocolate Thunder, he called himself. But that's been one of my favorite parts, is just watching our execution. I mean, that's a really technical term, but watching our relationship get so good and us get so much closer as we have this little life that we're responsible for.
Yeah. I feel the same way. And in summary, for me, I just feel so much. I'm not sure if this is going to make sense, but I just feel so much more like me, like who I was supposed to be. I feel so much more fulfilled. I feel so much more purpose and meaning and intention in my life. Not that I didn't have that before, but I feel like I have so much more of it now, and I'm so grateful for that. And I never knew one little human being could bring me that, but my perspective on life has changed so much. I feel way more empathetic, way more grateful, and way less selfish.
Yeah.
You know.
And the other piece, and 1A to this, which I absolutely want to make sure that we hit on, because you and I are just talking about our little trio, right? I mean, that has been, Mox's arrival and our little trio has been the thing that has been most disruptive to our schedules, right? Changing our schedules. But my next 1A favorite thing has been the integration of our families into the experience as well. Brooke and Grace and Olivia and your parents and sister. I mean, nothing, if you haven't had a child yet, you want to see people that you, with way more frequency than you used to see them, have a child, right? You'll find your parents over all the time. You'll find people making up reasons to stop by. Like, that's funny. Have you ever been to our house? But, have a child, and that all changes. So right next to that, 1A is integrating all of that together and getting some help from them and doing it as one big, cool unit wrapped around a little life.
Yeah, we are with our family so much more. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, I just feel so much more fulfilled as a human, and that is represented in our values and what we believe, and then our routines reflect that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's been fun, and I know and this is only 8 months. I mean, that the changes that are going to continue to come, and one would like to think it gets a little bit easier, right, as your child becomes a little less dependent along the way. But who knows? We'll be here to document that and detail that all the way through.
Yeah, my last comment is what I hope for the future for us, and when we're doing this again in a year, is that when Moxy gets older, we will be able to have more of a structured routine because she'll be so much more predictable. So I hope we can combine a little bit more of a structure, but with everything we've gained out of, this new perspective, this gratefulness, this fulfillment, with a little bit more structure, all combined into one.
Yeah,
I'm hoping that's what we can achieve.
Yeah, I would welcome just a little bit of the certainty and predictability back to it, but I would never want to go back to where we came from in August of 2023.
Agreed.
That's not what right looks like either.
Agreed. Cheers.
Cheers.
Welcome to Ace Rodney Talks for the Superstars. Tonight, guest, the incredible